Good to have you with us this afternoon. Let's continue now with our conversation on yesterday's by-elections. I'm joined now by Siviwe Gwarube, the Democratic Alliance's spokesperson, to discuss the DA's performance. Good to have you with us this afternoon, Ms. Gwarube. Let's look at the DA's performance yesterday. You managed to retain 6 of your wards and you lost 2. Tell us about, I guess, the reasons why you believe you managed to retain those 6.
Look, we have most certainly gone through a difficult 18 months in our organization. And I think it's important that we are upfront and outright with the electorate about that. We are not in denial about the fact that it has been a tough time. But what we are committed on doing is to say that we are going to spend the next while working extremely hard to win the trust of our voters back. We are ecstatic that we managed to retain 4 of our wards, that we managed some growth so retain 4 of our wards in the Western Cape. We managed to win by an outright victory in Ward 115. We managed to grow and retain some wards in Ekurhuleni. And these are encouraging news, but it doesn't mean that we are complacent in any way. It means that we need to use the next couple of months to really go out there and show South Africans that our known record of a clean and efficient government is something that we still stand by.
Your sentiments on having lost a ward to the Freedom Front Plus?
Excuse me?
Your sentiments and your reaction to having lost a ward to the Freedom Front Plus?
Yeah. Look, I think, Thami, these things happen. Like I said, it is important that as the Democratic Alliance, we set our stall firmly on what it is that we stand for, and that we reassure our voters that we haven't lost our track record. Ultimately, every single political party has an opportunity to vie for votes and to work hard to, win over the electorate. But we have a unique opportunity as the Democratic Alliance because we are the only opposition party that has a proven record of being able to govern in a province, being able to govern in municipalities that are even outside of the Western Cape. And so it's incumbent on us as a Democratic Alliance to go out and remind voters why they entrusted us with their votes then and as we head towards 2021. So while the results are encouraging, but we will continue working hard as we head towards the by-elections in January, but more importantly, as we head towards registration weekend in the next coming months.
And you spoke about the big elections next year, and you were the first to admit that the Democratic Alliance has been through a tumultuous, recent past and present now, with black leaders leaving the party, with allegations of racism and divisions within the party. How do you believe this is going to influence your efforts for next year's elections?
I think it's absolutely important, firstly, to play open cards with voters. The past 18 months in the organization have been a painful one where we have had to essentially redefine who we are. We've had to essentially go through an elective Congress during the year where there was a pandemic. We've had to go through a policy conference where we essentially engage delegates across the country on what it is that we stand for. Every organization and any organization that is healthy needs to go through periods of introspection and periods of fixing what is broken with itself. And so South Africans can take heart in the fact that we are not in denial about the fact that they may have lost their trust along the way with us, but we haven't lost our track record of being able to deliver clean and efficient governments like we've demonstrated where we govern, and we will continue essentially setting up that offer to them as we head into the elections. And so we haven't lost heart. So I think, even when other parties have momentum in other parts, the reality is that we are the only party that is big enough to unseat the ANC. We've done it before in the 3 metros, and we can do it again. And so we've got to reignite that spirit amongst our supporters and break into new supporters. And that's why it is also very encouraging that we are growing in predominantly strong ANC strongholds, because then that means that we are starting to eat away at our actually main opposition, which is the ANC, and not the other opposition parties.
I mean, you talk about the fact of having to reconvene and to regain lost grounds. And how do you plan to actually do that with the loss of confidence that you are speaking about? How do you actually plan to lure back the black voter, if it is the black voter that you want? You say that you're wanting to eat away from the ANC strongholds. How are you going to do that with the allegations of, I guess, imbalances and irregularities as far as race relations are concerned within the DA?
So, look, I mean, I think it's important that, as the DA, we tackle issues of race relations head on. I think it would be almost ahistorical and in denial of us to not be able to have an honest conversation with ourselves and within the organization about issues that are facing the DA. But it's also important to separate what we call race relations within the DA and within a country like ours, with issues of leaders that have left the organization for one reason or another. And so again,
just before you move on there, if we could touch on that point that you made, the reasons why they left were in most of the instances based on the race relations. So one cannot really separate the issue of race from the leadership, because the perception of the purge is largely being attributed to issues of race.
Yeah, Thami, I mean, I tend to disagree. I mean, I want to make an example, for instance, of the former leader, which was a big thing for the Democratic Alliance, having a sitting leader resign from the organization. And for instance, Mmusi never claimed that the DA was racist when he left. He claimed that he left because there was a poor electoral performance and he no longer could continue to be the DA's leader. And I'll bring in again, the issue of Patricia de Lille, sometimes, which is something that is brought on by many of the commentariats. Again, Patricia de Lille was held accountable for actions that she committed or omitted within the city of Cape Town, which then led to a disciplinary instituted against her. And so again, it's very important to not make blanket statements about every single black leader that has left the DA to have to be attributed to other race relations in the organization. And that's why I was saying it is important that while these things have to be dealt with, and they have to be dealt with strongly, and it's incumbent now on the current leadership of the DA to make sure that those allegations against the organization or within the organization are dealt with. They've got a strong mandate now. They've just been elected, and therefore it's incumbent on them to fix those things. But again, it's important that we separate issues around people who have left and people.
Let's also remember, Siviwe, that one of the things that Mmusi Maimane said when he was leaving, he also did support Herman Mashaba and Herman Mashaba's decisions to leave, which were the fact that he no longer believed in the Democratic Alliance as it was, in the direction that the Democratic Alliance was taking. So Mmusi Maimane in himself did take a stand in support of Herman Mashaba, and that was a race-related issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, I mean, it would be simplistic to say those were the reasons. That I don't think that Mmusi Maimane left the DA because Herman Mashaba left the DA. Mmusi Maimane and Herman Mashaba enjoyed a great relationship, a great working relationship. But again, I think that the former leader of the DA has made himself very clear about what are some of the reasons why he left active politics and why in particular he left the DA. But Thami, I think it's important. You asked a very crucial question here, that what it is are we going to do as a Democratic Alliance to regain the trust of voters where we are headed towards the important elections next year? What we're going to have to do, we're going to have to remind South Africans that we are one of the only organizations in the country that know how to govern and know how to govern well, and we've got the experience in doing so. But we're the only political party that has ever taken action against their own whenever allegations of corruptions have been leveled against them. We can't say the same thing about the ANC. We can't say the same thing about any other organization. And if we can go back to our strong points of governing and governing well and showing South Africans that they deserve a government that will serve them, then I think we will basically retain our lost ground.
There also has been speculation, Siviwe, about the positioning of the Democratic Alliance, that actually the vote that you are going after is the vote of the white Afrikaner, or a person who would have voted for the Freedom Front Plus. Your comments on that and your strategy?
I think that any political organization, Thami, that seeks to form the new majority in South Africa, like the DA does, would be misguided in thinking that they can only do so by segmenting the electoral, segmenting the electorate according to racial lines. The reality is that an overwhelming majority of South Africans are Black, and so if you do want to form a new majority in South Africa, you would have to have a strategy to attract all South Africans with equal intensity, and particularly have presence in Black strongholds or in Black areas. And so I would disagree entirely and vehemently with people who are saying that the strategy of the Democratic Alliance is now simply to segment the electoral market in order to target only particular voters. Of course, where we've lost ground in wards, in areas where we've lost ground to other opposition parties, we must work hard to get back those voters who've lost faith in us. It's important. That's part of the reason, and that's part of the regrowth process that we must undertake. But also, equally important, we must break new ground in areas where we haven't had a footprint before. And so, no, that it cannot be, because we are determined to formulate the new majority in South Africa, and we therefore cannot be segmenting the electoral market according to race. And in addition to that, Thami, we are the only organization in South Africa that is also saying that we refuse to divide South Africans according to racial lines. So many of political organizations within this country are stroking racial tensions in our country for the purposes of essentially winning over votes from certain segments of this country, and we're saying that's not what we're going to do.
Let me ask you this, Siviwe. I think a great points that you've brought up regarding the issue of racism, but we cannot put aside the fact of who we are as a country, the history of our apartheid past. And so we cannot really say race does not matter, because South Africans do look at themselves and their future also in reference to their past. How are you going to get Black South Africans to vote for a white male as their potential president once again?
I mean, as I said, and I was starting to say that as a Democratic Alliance, we're the only party that hasn't given up on the notion of a non-racial South Africa. And that is an ideal. It does not mean that not millions of South Africans are living in abject poverty on the basis that they are Black and they are poor. It does not mean that that poverty has no color. It does not mean that the 30 million South Africans that are excluded from economic opportunities right now are not people who are predominantly Black. And so as an organization, that is why we went through a process of saying, how do we come up with policy alternatives that show South Africans that it is a crime that so many of you are unemployed. It is a crime that unemployment continues to rise. And our view is that instead of playing cheap populism politics of stroking racial tensions, let's come up with solutions. Let's come up with constructive opposition to say, here's an economic plan that can work, that can get South Africans to work. And
Siviwe,
so I think a lot of South Africans...
Siviwe, unfortunately, we'll have to leave our conversation there for today. But thank you so much for your insight and stating your position as the Democratic Alliance. That's Siviwe Gwarube there, the DA spokesperson, not only on their performance in the by-elections that have just taken place, but also on the way forward for the party.